this heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
Eric, you are such a fuck ass.
Please.
Did you just call me a fuck ass?
Eric, that's enough.
You can go suck a fuck.
Oh, please tell me, Eric. How exactly does one suck a fuck?
You want me to tell you?
Please, tell me.
We will not have this at the dinner table, but we will have a discussion of Donnie Darko on the Pod of Dreams.
I met a new friend.
Real or imaginary?
Wake up, Donnie.
Imaginary.
I'm going to tell you a little story today about a young man whose life was completely destroyed by these instruments of fear.
I've been seeing stuff.
Donnie is experiencing what is commonly called a daylight hallucination.
I have to obey him. He saved my life.
Have you ever seen a portal?
Has he ever told you about his friend Frank, the giant bunny rabbit?
The what?
Like every living thing follows along set path. And if you could see your path or channel, then you could see into the future, right?
I'm not going to be able to continue this conversation.
Don't worry. You got away with it.
What is going to happen?
I only have a few days left before they catch me. We're just gonna stop.
You should already know that.
I got goosebumps.
That was great, actually. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pod of Dreams. My name's Ben Lewis, but I have the distinct honor of welcoming another Ben Head, to the podcast. You want to say hi, Ben?
Hello, listeners.
So, you're a special guest. You've got your own podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Head, and about your podcast, and then go ahead and explain why you picked this movie, Donnie Darko, over all the other possible movies you could have chosen.
Well, thank you, other Ben. I'm an enthusiast of all kinds, and with the Real Wolf Record Club podcast, I put on my music enthusiast hat. And it's a podcast where we kind of dive into some of the greatest albums of all time. We bring on some guests. We talk to them about what they're doing in their world, whether it's journalism, music, comedy. So we get a good breadth of guests there. And then we kind of break down an album, and we do it in a way that the guests will participate with. We have a kind of a fun rating system that's vinyl related. And we have some kind of fun segments where we do stuff with the album and really have some fun with it. But enough about music. We're here to talk about movies, which is another thing that I am enthused about. And I was especially enthused about picking Donnie Darko as the film. And the reason why I picked this film is because at some point in my youth, if you would have had me pull off my headphones listening to Incubus album of some kind and asked me, what is your favorite movie, Ben? I would have said, without hesitation, Donnie Darko. But it's been a long time since I watched it, so I wanted to see if that was just an opinion of my youth that maybe has lost a little bit of its luster, or if it's still something that holds true and is still one of my favorite movies today. So it was kind of an experiment in a way.
And what's the verdict? Where do you land?
Well, I don't think I'm supposed to spoil it at the beginning, am I?
What'd you think rewatching?
Spoiler alert?
Well, here, I'll jump in with something else. I'm going to say I kept thinking the whole time I was watching it, it's been quite a while since I'd seen it as well. Somebody who's got a music enthusiast podcast, this is such a great soundtrack, and I did not know if that at all had played a part, because whatever else we're going to say about the movie, I love the soundtrack.
It has a few
Darko.
great songs in it. Now, the great soundtrack, I think, there's like 3 or 4 great music drops, needle drops in the movie. I don't know if I would say it has a great soundtrack, but
I think every song in it is great, Eric. We can start out here. There's not a bad song in it, and there are several great songs.
Well, I did like that too. I remembered music being kind of integral to the plot, and then rewatching it, I was like, oh yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. The music just fits so perfectly with the scenes in the movie itself. I loved it.
All right. So Eric, what's your history with Donnie Darko?
So it's one of those movies that I probably saw. So it came out in 2001, right? That's the release date. I didn't see it in the theater. Probably saw it sometime like DVD, Netflix, when you were mailing the red envelopes back and forth. And I remember the first time I saw it just being utterly confused, just totally lost. Like, what the fuck is this movie about? What is happening? And you get to the end, and you realize, okay, that's it's about time travel. I watched it again. I'm still confused. So the second time I've seen it, there are things about this movie I still don't understand. So that was my main takeaway. Is like, I think like there's like 3 or 4 needle drops that are great. Drew Barrymore, great job by her in this movie, by the way.
Okay. She has like 3 scenes. Okay.
She's great. Should have won an Oscar.
Is this just a you think she's pretty thing?
That could be it.
Okay.
But a couple great needle drops. But yeah, the movie leaves you so confused throughout all of the movie until the very end, and then it kind of ties things together. But it's just one of those movies that I think is more of a it's this independent cinema where it's like movies can do whatever they want. There's no structure to it. They gave this guy the ability to make whatever movie he wanted. But I think in the end, it just is a little confusing. So that was my takeaway. Again, I'm still confused.
It's definitely opaque. So I didn't see this movie in the theaters either. This was the movie, one of those movies. I know, like, it's kind of it was in the Boondock Saints category for like movie bros that thought was super profound. This was the height of profundity if you were in college in 2004. Like, oh, it's so deep and so thought provoking because it seemed vague, but it's also entertaining, and it's not hard to watch even if you don't know exactly what's going on. It's not boring. But here's a question for you. Well, either one, either Mr. Head or Mr. Lane. Is this movie supposed to be a comedy?
Dude, when I was watching it, not to jump in here, but what genre is this? Is it science fiction? Is it horror? Like, what is it? And I guess comedy too is one of those things. So I can't answer that because I don't know.
Is it a superhero movie?
Could be. Is he Doctor Strange? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? So you're confused too still? You still don't know?
Well, genre-wise, it's all over the place. I don't know that I didn't hate it or anything. That wasn't necessarily a problem, but one point we're like dealing with very serious, dark stuff, and it is kind of creepy.
Yeah, he's building up to be like a crazy serial killer, like through part of the movie. Is that what we're watching? This guy, like this psychotic teenage kid, become a serial killer.
But then at one point we see them shooting guns at cans in the woods, and they're talking about Smurfs and like whether Smurfette, has sex with other Smurfs. Like, is this just a weird comedy thing? What is happening in this scene? And then it's kind of cheering for him a little bit when he's rooting against the obnoxious Christian woman who has the stupid life is just everything's either love or fear and that's it. Because then there's a moment where I'm like, rah, rah, and this is the times we're like, yeah, what's this kid is messed up. And we don't get introduced to him gradually. He's like messed up from the beginning. So I don't feel like I ever got good footing either. I said it's not necessarily a problem, but I'm with you in that I'm just kind of like, where am I standing? But Ben Ed, please jump in. What do you think? We'll give you some of your diagnosis here.
So that's what I remembered about the film, and it's what I enjoyed about the film because it can kind of be left open to interpretation. You can interpret the way you want it to be interpreted, and I like to think of this film as more of kind of like a sci-fi kind of like superhero film. And the thing that I most like about it is that you have Donnie as the main character is really kind of an anti-hero. Like, you don't really like him. He's kind of an asshole. He's just doing stuff that makes you uncomfortable. So I watched this with my wife, and she was like, he's not going to, like, kill people or something, is he? But that's, like, the feeling that you get from Donnie. And, like, well, yeah, he kind of did.
He kind of
did. One person
kind of did. But
not kind of. He did. He shot somebody in the face.
The guy from Independence Day. He shot him right in the head.
But he's kind of an asshole, right? But he's not. Because then you get this big payoff in the end where you realize that everything in the movie mattered, and it was intentional. He had to do that to end up where he was at the end.
But did he know that? Did he know?
He knows he has to sacrifice himself
to save the world, to save the universe. Is that?
Yeah. So you can go down all kinds of like Donnie Darko rabbit holes, and I think it's partially because the director really stepped in and like tried to fill in some plot devices.
So the director's cut, which I don't think I've seen.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. So I saw when I was looking up. So 2017, there was like a director's cut where I guess he clarifies a lot of this stuff because there's a scene apparently where he's with his psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist says stop taking those meds because they're placebos. So like indicating that he wasn't crazy at all. It was all time warp portal shit. Like. Because I think you watch the original movie, you kind of like, is he nuts? Is he just losing? Because he says he's crazy. He goes to therapists. Like, is he really just losing his mind?
He's passed out on the middle of the road.
I love that. I love the way this movie opened. By the way, I really like that.
We don't know anything about. He's already going
into him on the street.
And the music.
Yeah, music was phenomenal.
Oof, that's one of the needle drop moments.
Intro, for sure. But he's already been going crazy. He's already been sleepwalking for however many days before the movie starts. This is a recurring thing that has happened to him several times. I don't know. That's weird.
So that's why I like kind of this superhero angle, right? So you see the little tubes coming out of everybody's chest. So to me, I see that as like him being able to see the future. He's able to see destiny. And then you get into this whole like religion aspect and like, is this a religious movie? So I love how there's so many interpretations, but I like to think of it as he knows what's going to happen. So he can see. He can see these little tunnels, whatever those little weird things coming out of people's chest are. So he knows what he has to do to make things right in the end. So this whole I love the experience as a watcher of the film, that the things that happen in the movie are important and necessary, and they're required for the plot to exist. I don't know. It's just this crazy kind of experience where you're watching the movie and like the things that happen need to happen in order for the movie to exist and to make any sense.
Why don't you break down a little bit like what happens in the movie? Because if people listening to this like didn't watch it, like because there's some like main events that happen in the movie that I think tie it together. Try to explain it. I don't know. Maybe if you Ben Lewis, if you want to break it down for us.
Well, okay. So there's this kid who's sleepwalking. Named Donnie Darko. We meet him in his rich family and see his rich school. And one night, he sleepwalks away from his bed, and a big, like turbine from a commercial airplane crashes into his bedroom. But because he sleptwalked, he wasn't in there when it happened. It would have killed him, but it didn't. And from here he starts having these visions of this weird rabbit costume, one of the creepiest rabbit costumes I've ever seen. Like not bloody, it's just really off-putting. And the guy tells him the world's going to end in 28 days and starts telling him to do stuff. So he tells him to flood the school, for example. And then another time he's told to burn down the house of this obnoxious motivational speaker played by Patrick Swayze, who turns out was a hardcore pedophile. And he does these things, and he thinks he might be going crazy. It's interesting that you are confident that he can see everything that's going to happen. I'm not sure how he puts it all together until the very end of the movie, when he starts to realize what needs to happen. He seems really confused to me, and he's not sure if he's going crazy because he doesn't seem to sort of remembers where he was the night before. But he has all these experiences over the course of this 28 days, gets in a lot of trouble. He seems like, maybe he's demented, maybe he's deranged. And then in one crazy Halloween night, his girlfriend dies. He shoots a guy in the head, and he seems to realize after all of this that he needed to be hit by that plane in the first place, that he shouldn't have sleptwalked. He needed to die for whatever metaphysical reasons.
So is that when he goes back in time then?
Yeah.
So when he's carrying her dead body, all of a sudden he then goes back to that day when the turbine fell? Because that was the part where I was like, wait a second, how was he? So now we're time traveling? That was.
Yeah, I don't know how he time traveled. They didn't bother to explain, like, did he hop in a wormhole, or was he just able to do that? Did time itself unravel, go backwards? I don't know, but yeah, he clearly went back in time, and then he made the conscious choice to lie down, and he said, "Oh, okay, I need to die." But he was given the chance to have these other experiences. He gets to get laid for the first time. And the superhero angle that Ben Head's talking about, I mean, to be able to put that axe in the head of that bronze weird mascot outside.
The mongrel.
You see the mongrel, there it is. It looks a bit like a bulldog thing.
Taking his shit, too. He's, like, squatting over.
That's where it's, like, confusing. It doesn't look real. Like, it's so cartoonishly disgusting and off-putting. Maybe people thought that was cool in the 80s. I don't know, but it looked absurd. But he puts the axe through the top of that thing's head. That takes a lot of strength to do. And I don't know. But that's the macro outline of the plot for you. But along the way, we have lots of weird little asides. There's a discussion of the philosophy of time travel. This is maybe one of the most telling parts of the movie for me. He's going with his girlfriend to one of the craziest double features I've ever seen. The Evil Dead and The Last Temptation of Christ. And the camera pans to the bottom of that double feature, which is The Last Temptation of Christ. And that seems like a potential clue to decode the meaning of the film. And just if anybody cares, people probably don't, but The Last Temptation of Christ, that's a Scorsese movie. Willem Dafoe is Jesus Christ. He's on the cross. He's about to die, and this little girl comes and says, "No, you don't need to die. You don't have to die on the cross."
Interesting. You took more of Last Temptation than Evil Dead, as maybe Evil Dead was not what he's trying to say about what this movie is.
I tried to think about Evil Dead. I couldn't figure out what the metaphor was.
Because that's actually the movie they're watching when she falls asleep. So I tried. If you have an angle with Evil Dead, let me know. I have no idea.
I was like, the Evil Dead metaphor doesn't make sense.
He gets possessed by a house or like a demon. Like that has nothing to do with this movie.
Oh, but maybe that's the flip side. So see, now I'm learning something. Yeah, maybe those are the two extremes. He's either possessed by a demon, or he needs to die in the way that Christ needs to die, according to The Last Temptation of Christ, where Jesus gets to live a full life and then realize, oh man, the world's ending. I have to go back and die on the cross. It was required.
It's the fear and love continuum, guys.
But I hate the
fear and love continuum.
She was right all
the fear and love continuum. It annoys me to no end, the fear and love continuum. It is so reductive and stupid. So if that's ultimately what the movie's saying, Ben, that I guess off-putting to me.
No, I think it's kind of this deterministic versus like greater power and destiny, and it's the conflict between the two, and that's the part. And so my takeaway from this movie is that I don't as much care about the how, and I think that's where the director kind of gets bogged down. He gets bogged down in like explaining the how, and I haven't watched the director's cut, but I've read some things about it, and generally people say it's much worse. They don't like it as much as the theatrical cut. And it's because of some of that. Like the director tries to kind of insert more of the how, where to me, I really like the why. Like, why did what happened in the end happen? And it's because he made a choice. But he made that choice within the confines of destiny. And so then it gets to that kind of like biblical, like kind of Christ. Is he a Christ figure? Like it's I don't know. It's something that, as you watch this movie more and more, so I watched it a couple times before the podcast here, and I was like, oh yeah, well that's another way to look at it. So it's one of the fun that's fun to kind of take a look at and see if like you have a different interpretation of it than another time you watch it.
It's interesting you mentioned the director. So Richard Kelly is the writer director of this movie. So this is his first movie that he ever made, and it actually, like our generation, people in their late 30s now, like this movie is such a culturally significant movie, like you talked about. It's also like considered one of the best independent movies ever made. So like I was looking up a bunch of lists, like it looks like Empire, I think it was Empire magazine, 50 greatest independent movies. Mean Streets #1, Reservoir Dogs #2, and Donnie Darko #3. Like, this movie was a huge thing, a huge cultural thing, and this guy was, like, considered like the next Christopher Nolan. He made 2 other movies after this.
Yeah.
One I've seen the one with the button thing.
The box.
I have not seen the Rock movie, but like he
Salt
has
and
not.
Tales.
I haven't. Have you seen it? You've seen it. He hasn't made a movie since 2009. Like this guy he's disappeared.
I couldn't figure this out. I was on my list of things to bring up because whether it's the 3rd best independent movie of all time is irrelevant. It's a really good debut feature. Even if you think it has flaws, you'd see this and think, oh man, this guy could do some really interesting things. And boy, does it seem like he hasn't. And I don't have an explanation for why his output is so low.
I read an article that was kind of presuming that he's sort of stepped away from making movies, but it also said he's had a bunch of things fall apart over the years. Like he started making some movie what's the guy from Sopranos, and right before he died was going to make a movie, and then Gandolfini died. So he's had like a bunch of projects that just fell apart. But like, I mean, we're over 15 years now since he's made a movie.
Yeah, like I couldn't figure it out.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that box movie was like 2009 or something like that. Or
it was all right. It was okay.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, it's like weird that the same. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So the dude makes this film straight out of film school, USC Film School, for $4.5 million. Makes this whole movie. It does not look like a $4.5 million movie. It doesn't. It reminds me of like Primer, like another just
looks
great,
better than
like,
Primer though.
Looks better than Primer. Yeah. That's for sure. But like
great.
A great movie on just a total like shoestring budget. But this is actually, and I made some notes. Yeah, really preparing here.
Whoa.
Brought some notes. But I had a question here. Is this guy just like an accidental genius, or is he just got a talent that's been buried? Did he just have like this spontaneous, like everything came together, and because he was so inexperienced, he left some of these like holes open to interpretation that people just like latched onto and are like QAnon style, like I gotta put meaning to like everything. Or is he just getting buried?
The other thing too, like you have to consider the cast he put together with this movie too. Like there's got like Noah Wiley, and I mentioned Drew Barrymore. It has an incredible. The Gyllenhaals are both in this movie, and they have come on. Like he discovered Jake Gyllenhaal basically. Like yeah, I mean you can't give him enough credit for what he did with this movie. It's incredible. Swayze's in this movie.
In Mary McDonald's great.
Little kids.
All the cast is great, really. Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen doing cocaine and
literally in the hallways of his super rich prep school. Yeah. So just to your question, Mr. Head, I was thinking the same thing. If I had to guess, it feels like he just kind of stumbled into this. Like it's a good idea. It's an interesting idea. It's kind of all over the place, and maybe that's not like intentional. Maybe he kind of lucked into getting something that's kind of weird and off balance in a way that gives the door open to a lot of different people, but it wasn't a conscious choice. I'm not actually going to blend all these styles together into one cohesive film and make it work. It's more like I'm kind of doing stuff and seeing what sticks, and a bunch of it happened to stick. Because I just think if he's this really talented guy, he's not going to get buried unless he's really terrible, and maybe he's just a really terrible human being, and that'd be fair and correct. But I
think part of it too, though, is like that era of movies they don't make those kind of independent movies where they just give somebody money to make a small budget film right out of film school. Like he'd have to go to Marvel, or he'd have to go to DC, or make a Star Wars movie. He'd probably just like, I'm not doing that. I'm not.
Well, I'm talking about 2015 on. I mean, even in 2005.
There's Iron Man's 2008. I mean,
I know. I deliberately picked it before a single Marvel movie started. I mean, that's 4 years that have gone by, and he did Southland Tales, in whatever it was like 2006. And
yeah, but that was a giant bomb, though. That's the other piece of that. That was like a huge disaster, because following Donnie Darko, they gave him all this money. He's got The Rock in this movie. It's a big budget. And it was a huge bomb.
Justin Timberlake.
Okay. Timberlake's in that movie? Wow.
Timberlake.
See, well, that's going for
JT.
That just further supports that he's just kind of, he lucked into Donnie Darko. Then if he took his big break and failed to hit it. And then the box, I don't remember the box making any money. It didn't interest me at the time at all.
Eric, to your point, I had read that he was kind of in that camp of like, I got to do it my way, or I'm not going to do it at all. I'm not buying into any franchises. Like, don't give me a Marvel movie. Like, I want to do my own thing. And I have to imagine that put some people off.
I mean, Christopher Nolan is a good comparison because, Memento comes around the same time, and he's somehow able to get money to make big budget movies. They make a lot of money. They're original stories. He does tie in with Batman, but he finds some way to make them his movies. Like, it's just like interesting branching points where Nolan does this and Kelly kind of zigs and he zags, and it obviously the success is what it is, but. I just watching this movie, you see like, oh, this is his first movie. He's like in his early 20s. This guy is going to be like one of those great directors, and he just wasn't at all. And it's kind of wild. I have a question for you guys, and maybe this is a tangent. There's a scene in this movie where after Donnie gets busted for yelling at the fear love lady teacher, he's in the principal's office, and the principal says to him, that his test scores are intimidating, and he says your Iowa test scores are intimidating. Did this movie take place in Iowa?
No, it's the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, ITBS. I don't know if you got that in Minnesota, but there's this big test. I took the Iowa Test of Basic Skills when I was in, like elementary school and high school. I had assumed that was just an Iowa-specific test, but that test was spread all throughout the U.S. I don't know. Some states may have taken it up and some didn't. But
because I saw it was in Middlesex, Virginia, but then he said your Iowa test scores. I'm like, wait, what? Why is he taking Iowa?
Yeah, because they're watching the Washington's Commodores. Before they were the Commodores, they were.
That was my other question. Yeah.
And it's clear there aren't too many neighborhoods like that in Iowa. It's just going to show that he's really, really smart, and he's basically an atheist. But then
agnostic.
Okay. He's an agnostic atheist. We can talk about these labels. He does not accept the conclusion that a God exists as put forth by various religious entities, which makes him an atheist compared to those claims. But he doesn't claim to know, hence Gnosticism, atheism. But anyway, he's wrestling with that, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely a clear religious undercurrent. He's talking to Noah Wyle about what if you could do something with God's plan. It's all pretty vague and weird.
Well, there's a bunch of stuff about like Republican Party too, like his, which I don't know. They're taking shots at conservatives. Like his dad's watching the debates, and Maggie Gyllenhaal says she's going to vote for Dukakis, and he gets all pissed off. So there's like some weird political jabs in the movie too, which I didn't track. Like, why
I just thought
is.
That was like a kid rebelling. I'm just going to piss off my parents by voting against the people they like.
Well, there's a theme of like critical dogmatism. So it's kind of saying like you can't live in the extremes. Like there's more complexity to life than fear and love. Like you can't just like blindly say I'm going to follow this political party because of this one issue, which is kind of like your sparkle motion, whatever that lady she loves, like being in that simplistic mindset of it's either this or that. And that's what I liked about the film too.
But like Drew Barrymore and Noah Wyle are these like really good-looking, smart teachers, and they're obviously like on the other side of the aisle in terms of political spectrum. But like, I don't know. It was just interesting that they, there's that whole like burning book stuff in the PTA meeting. It's like, well, why is this? What does this have to do with time travel? Like, just kind of confused by all that stuff.
Well, it has to do more. Ben had already mentioned this, but I'll bring it back. I mean, we're talking about determinism. This is the idea. If God picked the reality that we live in, could anything happen that isn't part of God's plan? Whatever horrible thing you want to think of, it all have to be part of God's plan. Everything would be determined. You couldn't be surprised by anything that happened. But then time travel would be the direct contradiction to that. That would be a way of undermining God. There's this aspect to it. But then that's where Jake Gyllenhaal was like, hey, what if you mess with determinism in the confines of God's plan? I don't know. Because that discussion you had with Noah Wyle, that's the piece of the movie that most throws me for a loop. I really have trouble figuring out exactly what's going on in that scene, other than he doesn't want to talk about God to a student and get fired. But it has to do with this determinism.
Well, the teachers were all weird. Like the Drew Barrymore scene when the new girl walks in, and
that was messed up.
She's like, pick the boy you think is the cutest. Like, what kind of fucking teacher would do that? Like,
and then she tells another girl to get up.
That is psychotic.
Yeah, like, that's terrible.
There's a whole bunch of stuff, like even the bullies, like they're so racist, and it's like there's just I didn't understand why he made it in the 80s and turned it into this like 80s high school movie. That also to me kind of confused me a little bit too. Is like I didn't remember the first time I saw that this took place like in the past, that for no reason. There's absolutely no reason why it took place in the 80s.
Well, I mean, he wanted it to take place in 1988
because that's when he grew up, and he grew up in Virginia. So he was playing some familiar chords here to bring it back to some music.
Oh yeah. So what do you think? Is that a valid thing to do? Is to place a movie in an earlier time and play the music you listened to at the time? Is that acceptable, Eric? Or
Eric, what I think what he wanted to do
for no reason.
He
wanted to put it on a hyper specific timeline,
and he thought he could pick the music that would resonate and the time and place, and he could really evoke that in a way better than he could teenagers in 2001.
Is that like a Back to the Future thing too? Is he trying to like pigtail off that? I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, Back to the Future came out 16 years before this, approximately. So I don't know that he's trying to copy Back to the Future. They've mentioned it in the movie once.
No, with the time.
I guess. I just think if you're going to make a movie about something, I mean, would you be able to wouldn't you better be able to write about going to high school in the late 90s and early 2000s?
Yeah, but you're just playing on nostalgia. It's like the Force Awakens guy. He just makes movies in the past just to pull on nostalgia.
Well, okay, you're talking about J.J. Abrams. We are down a very weird Donnie Darko rabbit hole wormhole.
It's just there's no reason for it to be an 80s.
J.J. Abrams is a whole other beast. This guy was trying to recreate the lived experience that he knew. The people that loved the most weren't people that were in high school in the 80s. I mean, all the people that I talked to about this movie had no idea.
Stranger Things. Like Stranger Things is in the 80s. There's no reason that movie takes place in the 80s except to play on nostalgia for people. Like,
but there's
no storytelling reason for it.
I've already explained the storytelling reason to you, and you don't seem to find that acceptable.
I don't. That's not acceptable.
Now, boys.
He very much decided, hey, I know what this was like. I think I can make this movie if I set it in the 80s. This will work for my vision. I think there's a very specific reason, instead of trying to set it in 2001 or 2000. And it's interesting, and I don't think nostalgia was the big play in 2001. It wasn't like, hey, look at all these other movies playing up the 80s, like Back to the Future from 15 years ago. We got to really, I don't think the nostalgia thing was happening. I think he just thought that would be the best way to make the movie work. And it certainly doesn't get in the way of the movie. Would it be better if it were set in 2000?
No, I just thought at some point with time travel, there was going to be some reason why it was in the 80s, that we would jump ahead or, cut back. I don't know. I was just confused by it.
I think it's set in the 80s for the music. And Eric, you mentioned 4 needle drops, and I got to imagine that it's one of these 4. Head Over Heels by Tears for Fears, The Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen.
The Killing Moon is a sweet-ass drop when he was walking into high school. Like, that's incredible.
Duran Duran, Notorious. And then we've got Mad World covered by Gary Jules and Michael Andrews. What's the mic drop of the mic drops? The needle drops of the needle drops. Which one do you guys like?
Oh, I liked all those.
It's Echo and the Bunnyman for me. The Killing Moon, that is incredible, that sequence. But isn't the Gary Jules cover of Mad World, isn't that a song from like the 90s?
Yeah, that might not be.
Didn't the cover come out? See, that was the other thing. Is like that's a newer version of that song. So I was like, wait, so you're using like a new version? Yeah, that wouldn't have existed in 1988.
Eric found a nit and he's picking it.
Well, it's all part of the. Why make it if you want to play these songs? Why make it back in the day when that song didn't exist? I don't know.
You've already said it wouldn't matter if he had made it more recently. So it's bizarre that you're fixated on this choice that the person who made the movie wanted.
Mad World is a 1982 song by Tears for Fears.
Yeah, but the version in the movie
is a cover.
The Gary Jules version. When did that come out?
That one you've heard is very, very different, Ben Head. I've heard that one, and it's very, very different than the cover.
I think they took a little bit of artistic liberties.
2001.
To make it.
They released in 2001.
Yeah, they made it for the movie.
Yeah.
So the best, out of the best. I mean, the Killing Moon is great. I mean, I also love Will Tear Us Apart at the Party. Man, they're all great.
I just gotta say the Notorious. Like, that sequence with the little girls dancing, why was that, like, 15 minutes long? That was just, like, I don't know. That made me a little uncomfortable. Like, what?
It's
You can't cut this short?
It
It didn't have to be so long, though. It's too much.
I don't remember how long it was. I'm sure it wasn't 15 minutes. I'm sure it just felt like 15 minutes to you. But it's supposed to be uncomfortable. I mean, it's like sexualizing these girls, and this Christian woman has no problem doing that. This one who just talks about love and fear and supports a pedophile. And one of the great touches, by the way, I mean, that in terms of having seen this before, I knew that Patrick Swayze was a pedophile, and you see one of his obnoxious videos, love, fear. And there's a kid that used to wet the bed or whatever. And he's not going to be afraid anymore. This is why I just can't tell if the movie's a comedy, because those sequences are so absurd. They're like laugh out loud ludicrous.
There's a scene where like a boom mic is in the shot too.
Yeah,
when he's,
yes, correct. Like, but he and that's also great. But he's like hugging that kid, and he smacks his ass, and it's super uncomfortable. And
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I caught that.
It's like, oh God, yeah, there are signs. You know, oh God, I can't believe he's single. Whoa. So I mean, I like Notorious because it is so uncomfortable, and the Christian woman's obsession with it is like just this weird. She just doesn't seem to get like, oh, this is very gross, and she doesn't have a problem with it. And
I know it's outside your timeline, Eric, but I'm really into the Mad World cover by Gary Jules.
It's incredible.
It's just like
it's a great way to close the movie.
Perfect. It's so perfect. It like matches up exactly what's happening on screen. It's like brings the whole movie together. Brilliant.
Yeah, there's not a bad music choice in this movie.
I mentioned this in the last podcast because Ben started singing it. So for all you who listen to Ben singing, I'm sorry. You had to listen to that. But Gears of War was the game that song was in the trailer for, and that's another incredible like rendition of or use of that song.
That's a good song.
Filling that gap.
No, fair enough. But I mean, I think all the performances are just right, really. I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal's off-putting, but he's supposed to be. He's just kind of all over the shop, creeping people out. I mean, smarmy and I don't know. Yeah, this movie, it was better than I thought it was gonna be. I thought this was one that wasn't gonna live up to my memory hype. I'll have to say, Bedhead. I was thinking.
Jake Gyllenhaal's an interesting discussion to have because like he's kind of having a moment. Interestingly enough, he just hosted SNL like Saturday before we recorded this. When this comes out, it'll have been a few weeks ago. But like his career is kind of funny. He's kind of an interesting guy. I find him incredibly annoying. Like I do not care for him as an actor at all. And he works in this movie because he's supposed to be kind of a troubled person. But I was thinking about like Jared Leto, who's also kind of that same generation. Like who's more annoying, Jared Leto or Jake Gyllenhaal?
Jared Leto.
Oof, not even close. Jared Leto.
Yeah, Jared Leto's got him beat, but they're from the same ilk. I think. I don't know. I guess I'm willing to give Jake Gyllenhaal more credit. I mean, his performances are generally more nuanced and interesting. I mean, Nightcrawler's legitimately a great performance. Not that I've seen everything, but yeah, I mean, he'd be tough. Leto won an Oscar.
I understand he won an Oscar. Okay, that's fine. He won an Oscar. He did a good job in that role, I guess. Although, I mean, he's not a trans woman, but that's fine. I don't know what else. I mean, I don't know what else I've seen Jared Leto in that I liked. I mean, are you a fan of his Joker performance?
No, it was awful. One of the worst. Like,
but I agree. I wouldn't want to like have to actively root. It'd be tough for you to sell me as Jake Gyllenhaal, somebody who's overtly likable. I haven't seen Ambulance, but I feel like he's playing.
Our entire like adult lives, they've been just trying to make him a thing, and it just has never seemed to work out. And I think it's maybe just because of him. I don't know.
Is he kind of a bit character? Like, is he you like to root against him, and he's kind of awkward and a little bit off-putting, but that's like what he brings to the table? Because I'm thinking about it, and like Nightcrawler, he plays the same kind of creepy, like, I don't know if I really like this guy, but he's kind of like the hero, I guess, but
well, you're
not
definitely
really.
Not supposed to like him in Nightcrawler, but he's captivating, but he's awful.
Maybe that's where he succeeds. Maybe he's just an awful guy, and he plays an awful character, and that's what we like.
Well, like Brokeback Mountain is like that's a great performance. Like he's really good in that movie.
That's true. I forgot he's in there. You kind of forget that it's him because he does play somebody who's actually likable.
He can do like really good dramatic stuff. It's just when he tries to do like leading man shit is where it's just like, God, you're just not doing it, guy. Like it's not working for you.
What do you mean by? I mean, isn't Brokeback Mountain a leading man shit? Isn't that what you just said?
Yeah. I mean, yes, but that's kind of a duo performance with Heath Ledger there.
You just mean not an action performance?
Yeah, I guess. I mean like big budget like superstar roles that he's tried. Just that stuff just doesn't work.
Even in Marvel, he played a villain. Oh, spoiler alert! He played a villain.
Yeah.
Who maybe is a nice guy. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, he's not an action star so much. Yeah, he's not. I mean, he's not ever been that I can recall. I guess I didn't see Prince of Persia. Maybe that was
awful. Just terrible. One of the shittiest movies ever made.
But if he's got to be a guy who's kind of unlikable, I mean, I probably would enjoy his performance in Ambulance if I were going to watch that movie. I'm sure he's just a full-on lunatic.
But he's like a little kid in Donnie Darko, right? Isn't he he's like in his teens, right?
I have no idea how old he is.
He is for a young, like, first time. He's really good in Donnie Darko. Like, there's a scene with the therapist where he starts crying. Like, that's some pretty impressive acting, I thought.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. Those therapy scenes were more scenes in this movie that really threw me for a loop. Like, I guess he's troubled, so he has to see a psychologist, but, like, he starts almost jerking it in the therapist's office.
Well, she put him in hypnosis, so he's, like, hypnotized, and he starts...
I understand, but but they didn't have to put that scene in.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's like, it's a choice.
And then he's just awkward, and that's it. I'm like, is that funny? Is it funny that he almost started rubbing one out? What was that? I mean, that's one of those scenes. It just throws me for an absolute loop. I just have no idea where this guy is at or what's going on.
I think it helps to show like his progression. So like his instincts are to not be what he is at the end. Like his instincts are to think selfishly and to do the things that give him pleasure. So he burned down a house. I mean, that's why he was in therapy, because he apparently burned something down. So he's just like, yeah, I'm thinking about having sex with chicks in high school and whatever. But then that's what I love is his development as a character. Is at the end he's like, you know what? All of these other people fail because I make this choice to not like be in this room. Why don't I just make the choice to be in the room? Everybody else succeeds.
He never chose to leave.
So he becomes Jesus. He Jesus himself.
There you go. Now you're at the religious angle. Now you're at the religious. You can talk about the religious
the Last Temptation of Christ interpretation of this, but he didn't choose to leave the room in the first place. That's where this gets very bizarre to me. He didn't like, oh, I know there's this thing that's going to hit me, and I'm going to just not do it.
Well, that was where. So when the movie opens up, what is happening? Is he just coming out of a trance, like sleepwalking?
Yeah, he sleepwalk.
Is that the first time that he had done that?
No, I don't think so.
That's the interpretation. There's a Groundhog Day theory to this, like
right? There's a
time loop, and he just keeps going until he gets it right. And all of these people in the movie are influencing him towards the right outcome, so that they all survive. And then at the end, they kind of all have this lingering sense of what has happened. But because they've rebooted and they've been reborn, then they begin anew.
Because you mentioned like all of this stuff had to happen. So like he had to flood the school in order to get to the next step to get to the point where she gets killed.
Yeah, he had to flood the school to meet her, right? He even says that in the conversation, hey, I'm glad the school's flooded because we wouldn't have this conversation.
But there's other ways to like just say hi. I mean, they were in class together. Like, yeah, whatever. Okay.
I know, but it let him be the hero because he got to walk by the two bullies being Seth Rogen saying, I like your boobs. And just being incredible sociopaths. Though that's interesting, a time loop theory. But is it so he doesn't kill himself, and then I guess his mom and little sister end up dead. His girlfriend ends up dead. But on the flip side, Patrick Swayze gets away with child porn.
The engine from the plane was the mom and sister's plane, right?
Well, it's a whole paradox thing, which is where this gets really wonky. In the time portal, it opens up an alternate dimension or something, an alternate timeline. Because
the explanation is that there's a parallel. It's basically a parallel universe. There's a tangent universe and a regular universe, and then the tangent universe is temporary. It lasts for 28 days, which is the amount of time that it took them to film this film on $4.5 million of budget. And so it gets really deep into the rabbit hole, and that's why I said there's this whole like explanation of how. And the director Richard Kelly has kind of stepped in and said like, well, here's what I was trying to say. And I don't know if that makes it better. I think it's better to just leave it open to interpretation, and just like figure out what it means to you, and what that experience means to you. But the part of the experience that I enjoyed the most is feeling like you're invested at the end, like you've been invested in this process, like everything mattered, like everything had to happen, or else the movie wouldn't have made sense.
Well, couldn't he have just, if this is a loop, couldn't he try to do a loop where his girlfriend doesn't die, and where his mom and sister don't get on the plane and go to Star Search, and he doesn't shoot the guy? I mean, couldn't he try to create that reality, but he still burns down the house of the pedophile? I mean, isn't that an option? He's in a time loop.
There's a time loop theory, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm just thinking. I mean, he could have just said, even if there wasn't, even if this is the first iteration of the alternate universe, and he just decides, you know what, I'm going to try to do these 28 days differently.
Well, what happened to her body, right? Because he's carrying her dead body to his house. Does she just blow up with him when the thing hits the house? Like, there would be two versions of that girl out there, right?
Well, no, the whole other alternate timeline combusted or whatever, imploded.
So they just jump back. Okay, all right.
He jumps back to the original timeline.
See, this is where I'm just like, my head hurts. I don't know.
I mean, it's not Primer complicated, just to bring that back. I mean, Primer is way more complicated and harder to grasp than this. It's just, it's clearly that there's just enough data points to kind of take this however you want, you know. I mean, and that is part of what makes it interesting. I mean, I agree on that front. You can just kind of treat it as a little Rorschach test for what you want to be true. But I don't know. That doesn't seem like your style, Eric.
Not my style, dude. Well, should we transition over to anything anybody want to say about Donnie Darko before we give our ratings?
If you build it, he will come.
No.
All right. Well, Ben, as the guest, how did you rate this movie out of 5 stars? You can do half stars. Where'd you land?
You know, on my Letterboxd rating, I had to go back and look. I did have it as a 5-star. I think I'm gonna have to downgrade that to a 4.5, just because I know there's better films out there, right? But I do love this movie, and I love the experience of watching it again, and watching it again with a lot of time removed and a lot of maturity added. And I still really liked it, so I'm gonna stick with like a 4.5 on this one.
So not perfect, but close to perfect.
It's not a perfect film, and I think my opinion on this is that it's this purely accidental genius, like inexperienced filmmaker, had a vision, kind of did what he thought he needed to do, and he just had this perfect amount of like holes and stuff that's left open for interpretation, but still a good idea that you can kind of glom onto it and fill in the blanks and make it your own. And it's almost kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure film or something without it being a choose-your-own-adventure film. And then afterwards, he tried to get too heavy-handed with his direction, and people are like, yeah, but this is stupid. Like, I don't like this because we explained it all. So that's where I sit on it.
I am slightly cooler on the movie than you've been ahead, but not much. I was kind of 3.5 to 4 range, and our discussions kind of pushed me up to that 4. There are choices in it that are kind of baffling, and I think sometimes it's all over the place in a way that isn't. It kind of works, but it also sometimes doesn't. It sometimes pulls me out a little bit. I'm like, what's going on? Like when that woman talks about having Donnie told her to shove something up her anus. Like, this is just so bizarrely goofy. Where am I at? But I liked it a lot better than I thought it was. I thought it was not a movie that was going to hold up, and I was going to think, oh gosh, man, this is the acme of deep cinema when I was 21. It's a lot better than I recalled. It was not boring, and there is a lot to chew on, legitimate stuff to chew on, which I enjoy. Yeah, I mean, keep it ambiguous. One of Ridley Scott's dumbest things, they just couldn't let Blade Runner be ambiguous, and he just wanted to keep tinkering with it. Because he didn't like the people were interpreting it differently than him. So yeah, just let it sit. Yeah, but that plays to it being just kind of an accident. I think maybe he just made mistakes, but it worked. But really, really good watch.
So I'm the wet blanket here. I gave it 2.5 stars.
That's no shock.
I think like you said, I mean, a lot of the things you pointed out are reasons why I would drop it. It has some good things going. The music's really good. It's well made. It's an incredibly well made movie. I just think it's like pick a lane. Is this a time travel movie? But if it is, we don't see any time travel until like the very last second of the movie, and then you're left confused. Like, wait, was that time travel? And they're like, oh, is this a horror movie? Because you have the like scary costume and it's on Halloween, but there's really no other horror elements other than that. And then like, is it a high school comedy? Because there's a bunch of high school comedy shit in there. You got like the mean principal, and you got Swayze being a diddler, and you got like funny kind of stuff in it. But like, it never ends up being a comedy. I mean, you have Seth Rogen in there. He doesn't have one joke. Like,
no, he's playing it serious. Seth Rogen's like the least funny character in it.
So I mean, I was not only confused by what was happening, because what was happening made no sense to me, but also just like what kind of movie is this? I was just like, wait, pick a lane. Where am I going with this? But I mean, it's interesting because it is one of those movies, like for our generation, it was that intro to like cinema, like actual thought-provoking movies that had such a profound impact on that. I guess maybe I should put it higher for that reason, but yeah, that's why I gave it 2.5.
Oh yeah, I mean, if anybody's looking to impress Eric, any directors out there, which I'm sure there are many that are hanging on every word, don't do ambiguous movies, Eric. Just explain. Keep explaining. Explain it all.
Ambiguous is fine, but let me know where you're going so I can make that decision.
Okay.
But here we have a sci-fi movie with a hyper-specific timeline. We've got the right date it occurs on. We've got the amount of time that the movie is going to elapse. Like, when the decision has to happen, it seems very, very bounded, Eric. How do you wrap that concept?
Well, I guess the date is the thing I normally don't like, is when you set a specific date that this sci-fi movie has to occur. That always bugs me, because it's like, you don't know. I mean, there's no reason for it. And again, this is another one of those movies. There's no reason for it to be in the 80s, except you like 80s shit and you want to play 80s music. That's the only reason.
Or you lived in the 80s and you went to school and you're like, oh, I think I can recreate this experience accurately with the music.
But it's like, is it a period piece movie? Like, again, like, is this... Are you doing a specific reason that it's during that time? I suppose then you can do the Bush Dukakis stuff and you can talk about politics or life at that time. But I guess it's sort of like American Graffiti was another example of, for him, he's making a movie about 20 years before when it came out, just to... And
that's a good point. It was terrible. So stupid.
No, like, I love American Graffiti.
Don't make a movie about...
But that's the point of the movie. The point of American Graffiti is to like talk about that kind of life.
Make a movie.
This is a sci-fi movie about time travel.
1975. That's what year it was. Don't look back 20 years ago. The cars of the 50s. Don't do it. Nope. Not allowed.
If you build it, you will come.
All right. So next piece, everybody's been waiting for this. The 5 Degrees of Field of Dreams, where we're connecting Donnie Darko to the greatest movie ever made, really, Field of Dreams. Ben Head, would you like to go first? You know how to play the game. You understand the rules.
Ooh. I understand the rules, and I can't tell you how much fun I had in this process. So all you listeners out there, just do it. Like, do your own path. This is fun. It was challenging.
It's hard,
but it's really fun.
Yeah,
and it gives you a little bit of more appreciation, I think, for movies. But here we go. I'm ready.
And feel free to like chat about a movie if you want to, like, go on a 10-minute about time travel or something. Go ahead.
Well, we'll just get it. We'll just take this thing in a loop. We'll just go back and come back, and we'll just get it right. So no, we have Donnie Darko, the 2001 movie that we just discussed, starring as had been mentioned, Seth Rogen. So he makes this is actually his film debut. So he did Freaks and Geeks. He hops over into Donnie Darko, and he plays Ricky Danforth, the bully, one of the bullies. He only has a couple of lines, and Ben mentioned it. The first line he has is, "I like your boobs." Great. just classic. I mean, Oscar-worthy performance. But he's also cast alongside his bully counterpart, which I don't know if you guys know this, but it's Alex Greenwald, who is in Phantom Planet. So he's one of the band members of Phantom Planet. He's the other bully. So I thought that was interesting. So Seth Rogen.
Yeah, that California song, California. That's them, right?
Yeah. Ben's the singer. Let's go. Let's
hear
go,
it.
I don't know the song. No, you guys should keep going. I honestly don't know.
California. He's on the OC.
Oh, I never watched the OC. I don't know if that was a Minnesota thing. I didn't ever watch the OC.
Well, we have Seth Rogen in any event, and a band member from Phantom Planet, a song which Ben is not familiar with. But Seth Rogen was in The Green Hornet, a 2011.
That's a doozy of a movie.
That is a doozy of a movie. 2011 movie where he appears with Christoph Waltz, who plays Chudnovsky. I think this film is interesting because Green Hornet actually exists outside of this like DC Marvel rivalry, and it actually started as a radio serial, which many consider the birth of the podcast, you could say. So we have Christoph Waltz in 2011's Green Hornet, who also appeared in the 2019 movie with Mahershala Ali in arguably the best android-forward teen romance film of all time, Alita: Battle Angel.
Get out of here. Get the fuck out of here with Alita: Battle Angel. That is the
best android-forward teen romance film of all time.
Side story, Ben had recommended I check out this movie, Alita: Battle Angel. I paid $19.99 to watch this movie.
It wasn't $20.
It
totally
is,
worth it.
It is not good. I did not enjoy it, but it's kind of a running joke.
The best android-forward teen romance film of all time, starring Academy Award winner Mahershala Ali, who is also in 2016's Hidden Figures, a film that I really enjoyed, which also features Kevin Costner, the star of the greatest Iowa-based sports film of all time, Field of Dreams.
You did it. Ding, 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 ding. Nice work. And you wrapped in Alita: Battle Angel.
Masterful job.
All-time performance by Ben Head. All right. Should I go next? Should I follow that up? All right, I'll follow that up. I don't think I can, but incredible stuff. All right, so Donnie Darko is where we start. Drew Barrymore is in this movie, and she is incredible in this movie, by the way. Just want to mention that again.
How incredible.
Just
so incredible.
Very incredible. She's in a movie called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. It's a directed by George Clooney, and he's in that movie. But also in the movie with a sort of a cameo is a guy by the name of Matt Damon. And Matt Damon is in Saving Private Ryan. He's Private Ryan, the titular character, right? That's how we do that.
Eponymous, sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Also in that movie is Tom Hanks. Might have heard of him. He's an actor. First guy to get COVID, right? He's the one that started this whole thing. Thanks to Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is in a movie called Sleepless in Seattle, rom-com. Don't think I've ever seen it. But...
great movie.
Is it a great movie? Okay.
I don't much enjoy it, but I
for all our rom-com heads out there.
Romantic comedies.
Yeah. Also in that movie is a woman by the name of Gabby Hoffman. Now, she's in Field of Dreams, so that's how I got there. She plays their daughter. But she's also right now in a show called Winning Time. It's on HBO. It's unbelievable. So good. It's about the Lakers, the rise of the Lakers dynasty. Amazing show. And she's really great in that too. But so that's how I got there.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll send this home. The star of Donnie Darko, a guy, an unlikable fella called Jake Gyllenhaal. He
America's
played a villain. Yeah. He played a guy who maybe he's going to be a hero, maybe he's not, who knows. Mysterio in Spider-Man Far From Home. Also in Spider-Man Far From Home is a fella named Samuel L. Jackson, playing Nick Fury, who's in the second best Die Hard movie of all time, Die Hard with a Vengeance. And then
shouts to Bruce Willis, guys. Not going to be in the movies anymore.
I know it's a bummer.
Even Jim Carrey.
Well, Jim Carrey for other reasons, but
yeah, Jim Carrey's isn't as depressing. He just doesn't want to do movies anymore. But Bruce Willis has got his aphasia and can't. And he's been in all these horrible Redbox movies as well.
What are we going to do about Sonic 3 though?
I don't know. CGI, Jim Carrey, I don't know.
Well, Jim Carrey, I think it's because he doesn't want to get vaccinated, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Okay. Fair enough. But yeah, Die Hard with Vengeance. There's a guy who's a cop in Die Hard with Vengeance named Graham Greene. Graham Greene is a Native American performer, and he's in Dances with Wolves, starring Kevin Costner and also Mary McDonnell, who's the mom of Donnie Darko.
She's in Sneakers too, and you've used Sneakers quite a few times.
Oh, Sneakers is great. It's a nice entry point, but went with Dances with Wolves and Graham Greene this time. So then that obviously takes us to Field of Dreams. So we did it.
All right, awesome. Well, so normally this is where I would just tell you what movie we're watching next week, but we're gonna make this a little more fun. We're gonna do a little movie trivia, and you both can play. So I'm gonna give 5 clues. The clues are to the movie that I picked. Each clue will be kind of a little easier, a little closer to the actual film. You get one guess, so if you guess, you're out. So use your time wisely. If you think you know it, jump in. If you don't, just wait it out, and we'll get to it. So, all right, I'll start up the music. I don't have it here, but we'll start up the music, and we'll start with clue number 1. The author Larry McMurtry was originally hired to write the screenplay for this movie.
Larry's one of my close personal friends, but I can't pick from all of the films that he's been interpreting.
Oh, he's a great author. You don't know Larry? He wrote Last Picture Show, Lonesome Dove. One of my favorite authors.
One of my best friends.
He's a good buddy of yours. Okay. So you don't know that. All right. The movie was released in 1998.
I think I know where this is going, but I'm holding my rounds in the chamber.
You only got one.
Yeah, you only got one guess. All right. The soundtrack features the song "Get Together" by the Youngbloods, and it's prominently played in the movie. You know the song.
Yeah, Ben, can you sing it for us?
Get together, everybody get together, wanna love one another right now. That song? No?
That's beautiful.
Alright, there's a line in the movie. It goes like this. We can't stop here. This is Bat Country. No? I thought that would give it away for sure. You don't have it.
Oh.
You got it?
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Is that what you were going to guess, Ben Lewis?
No.
What were you going to guess?
The mirrors didn't match up.
You said we can't stop here. This is Bat Country.
Yes.
I was like stuck on like Dusk Till Dawn or something, but the years didn't make sense. But that was the closest I was going to get.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is correct. That's the movie we're doing next week. The last clue stars Johnny Depp as Gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah, okay.
So another thing I'm announcing here on the Pod Dreams, I will be doing that episode completely drunk. In honor of Hunter S. Thompson, I'm going to start a little intoxicated, and I'm going to drink throughout the entire episode. Ben Lewis, if you want to join in, you can. I'm not pressuring you in any way possible. But we're going to see how that goes. So tune into that. It's going to be a very special episode. I'm going to be really plastered. And we'll see how that goes. But I would like to thank Ben Head for joining. One more shout out to the Real Wolf Record Club. RealWolfRecordClub.com is a website that all your stuff's on there. I see that you're doing Hunky Dory, or it just came out, right?
Yeah, we just released Huggy Dory episode with our guest Peter Jesperson, who is a Minneapolis legend. He's the guy that discovered the Replacements. It's a punk band from the Minneapolis area that's better than Nirvana.
No,
maybe
maybe
not.
I got their book. Trouble Boys. I got their biography. Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, it's great. We've got some great guests coming up as well, and some things that are in the hopper. Some pretty funny episodes coming up. Some good entertainment and some really interesting guests. So check it out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for joining, man. Any last words on Donnie Darko?
Watch it again, man.
It's on HBO Max, right? Is that where you saw it?
It's on HBO Max.
Yeah,
I own it.
Oh, you got
but
I
did look. That was one of my criteria for picking a film, is I wanted to have something that was accessible so people could watch it. But it is on HBO Max, so check it out.
Why'd you have to get so fucking smart on us?
Sometimes I question your commitment to Sparkle Motion, Ben.
I'm committed as ever, guys.
All right, well, thanks a lot. Tune in next week. I'll be getting drunk. And take it easy.